Hello. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, man? It's nice to meet you. I'm Jackson. What's your major?
English.
Oh, that's super cool, man. Yeah, that's cool. Do you have any hobbies?
Nothing much, just...
That's sick, dude. That's sick. Oh, what have I been doing? Well, you see, I read a 620,000 word Fallout / My Little Pony fan fiction over the course of 3 months.
Oh, you did you?
Oh, why?
Fan fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, I expected about as much. I love Fallout. I love ponies. I love Fallout Equestria. Many people have opinions on Fallout Equestria. Some think it's a masterpiece. After all, it was rated legendary by Equestria Daily, and that's a rather prestigious award. Others think it's complete trash. But what's without question is that Fallout Equestria is a cult classic, with a passionate community that's essentially its own sub-fandom at this point. Few fan fictions out of any fandom can boast that they have a print project and a crowd-funded unofficial audiobook, or would it be an official audiobook? Whatever. And numerous recursive fan fictions. The point is, Fallout Equestria is a hallmark of the brony fandom, and a lot of people within the fandom have opinions on it. But I and many others have often wondered, what would an outsider think about it? What would just a regular Fallout fan have to say? And I'm pretty sure we all have a pretty vague idea of what that is. It's probably some gay, edgy cringe fest with a lot of over-the-top violence and weird sex scenes. And, well, yeah, basically. But responses like that are from people who haven't really bothered to look into it. Believe it or not, I've found someone who did. Just an ordinary Fallout fan who read the book and gave a serious, in-depth, hour-long review of Fallout Equestria. So props to him. And I'm going to give a counterpoint review and just compare our thoughts and reactions from our two different viewpoints. He's called Ramblelime and he does reviews of mods and games, like kind of the same general thing that I do, but with different things. There'll be a link to his video in the description, as well as to another video by a channel called Mares and Stuff. They're bronies, but they don't like Fallout Equestria, so if you're actually interested in hearing what a bunch of different people have to say about the book, that's a good thing to check out too. There's a lot to be learned and gained from listening to people who you disagree with. So if you like this video, leave a like, and like their stuff as well, because this wouldn't exist without them. Let's get started, shall we? So if you're watching this and somehow not familiar with Fallout Equestria, let me just, give you a brief introduction. The gist is, it's the Fallout formula applied to the world of My Little Pony. It's set in an alternate timeline where Equestria, that is, Ponyland, was blown up and became a radioactive hellscape, Fallout. Our heroine has to do what she can to save the day and get by. The storytelling mirrors the basic gameplay loop of Fallout while retaining the fundamental themes and nature of My Little Pony. The key thing to remember is that this is indeed a fanfiction, and you need to take it for what it is if you want to enjoy it to its fullest. The critical shortcoming of fanfiction is that its quality is often inconsistent because the writers are usually amateurs, and they lack the resources of full-time authors to refine and polish their work. However, that's also what makes fanfiction so special, because the authors aren't limited by editor and publisher interference, so they have complete creative freedom to just tell whatever story they want, and to bend and ignore conventions, for better or for worse. The point I'm trying to make here is that it's not fair to hold it up to lofty standards when fundamentally, its goal is just to be fun, both to write and to read. And for the goals that I'm assuming KCAT set, I think it accomplished what it set out to do. I'll elaborate on it more later, but it's important to know that KCAT uses a blend of the storytelling techniques used in both the games and the show. So that means it is not a traditionally structured book, to say the least. Get the fuck away from me, Sting Bee. No. So Ramblelime's first criticism is that because the book follows that game's style, there's a lot of what he calls filler, where little Pip, the protagonist, fights raiders, loots stuff, does other Fallout things, and there are little, if any, stakes, because, big surprise, the characters aren't gonna die, and a lot of the objectives that they have don't actually further the plot along. They're just little side quests. Fuck! I can see why he didn't do much of his review outside. Now, all those criticisms he has are basically true. I don't disagree with them, I just disagree that they're bad. I'd say that the book is rough. As I said, I like Fallout Equestria, but I'm a much bigger fan of Project Horizons and the other recursive fics, like Murky Number 7 and Heroes. So my perception is undoubtedly skewed by those fics and the refinement of K-Cat's groundwork. I think it's important to recognize that all these stories benefited immensely from K-Cat's example, because she's the one who pioneered it. She's the one who made this niche and had to craft the world and the writing style on her own. It was all very experimental, with plenty of hits and misses. The inclusion of lots of seemingly extraneous combat and scavenging are almost a staple of Fallout Equestria's biggest stories, and later authors would refine the art of including it, but the point is that it does matter. It's part of the character of a Fallout setting and how a Fallout protagonist interacts with their world. Well, as I said, K-Cat's implementation of it is rough. It is still important to the heart of what makes this book what it is, a love letter to the Fallout and My Little Pony franchises. Regardless of the thematic and writerly intentions, as a reader, I genuinely like the things that he calls filler. For one, even though we don't ever have to actually worry about the characters dying, there's still fun in seeing how they get out of the predicaments that they're in. And when characters do die, it truly is unexpected and adds new stakes and drama to the story. And if you've been enjoying it as it is until then, it makes it even more gripping. Secondly, I just find it immersive. I'm someone who likes to get lost in a world and to know what it's like to live there and to explore it. And a major part of what makes Fallout appealing is the environmental storytelling you get while just exploring the world, and the emergent stories that come from how you deal with situations and enemies. The benefit of a written work is that it can flesh out those encounters into a complete, full narrative, filling in all the gaps. And as a fan of how Bethesda RPGs tell stories, I find the written equivalent compelling and satisfying. While sure, not everything advances us towards Pip's end goal, but everything does show us an apocalyptic Equestria and what it would be like to be there. And that's fun! However, I will say listening to it in an audiobook format maybe did make it less of a slog, since you can just sit back and take it in without the legwork, if you will. It's simply a matter of taste. It goes back to the adage, you can be the sweetest peach on the tree, but some people just don't like peaches. What he calls superfluous additions is what I call world building and immersion. Like in The Lord of the Rings, Frodo's journey out of the Shire involves a lot of talk about Bilbo's party, hobbit families, who gets what present, and Frodo's walk from Bag End to Crick Hollow, and so on and so forth. There's a lot there. And the movie showed that you could tell that story with probably 20% of the material. Yet, I find that, because I love the Shire, that it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, part of the books. Simply put, the world is as much of a character as the heroes, and Apocalyptic Equestria is a character I enjoy spending time with. His comments on the violence in the story being pure aesthetic, and being there just to say, wow, the world is messed up, are valid points. However, I could argue that the same could be said about Fallout. Immediately, I think of the raiders hanging bodies from chains in Megamart. It is purely aesthetics, to make the world seem scary and grim. But aesthetics make up a huge part of Fallout's identity, and the same goes fucking bugs. And the same goes for My Little Pony. My Little Pony is all about cute, colorful ponies, rainbows, smiles, happiness, and what life is like inside the mind of a happy, optimistic little girl. And it's pretty beautiful. And then Fallout Equestria almost immediately greets us with the ruins of Sweet Apple Acres, where in the show the trees have vibrant red apples that make delicious cider and magic jam. In the book, they poisoned a child whose father couldn't do anything to save him. Ponyville, the primary setting for most of the show's hijinks and adventures, a place that represented a better, idealized world full of friendship and fun and escapism, is now a burnt-out husk full of murderers and psychopaths. And then there's the Ponyville Library, the home of the show's central character, the type of fantastical, cozy, inviting place you wish you could live in. And it's now the heart of that nightmare. This is where being a fan of the show amplifies your experience to the nth degree. Well, this kind of gore is indeed what Fallout looks like. The lurid descriptions of it here isn't just, wow, shocking violence. It represents absolute defilement of what is nigh sacrosanct. It is applied to important locations in the show, and for the people who know what they are and mean, it's horrifying. The amplified violence is the equal and opposite reaction to the amplified cuteness of the cartoon, and one of the things that makes Fallout Equestria work is the juxtaposition of cute cartoon ponies and post-apocalyptic nightmare fuel. There is one other purpose to it, though. It's cool. Blood and guts in the post-apocalypse is cool. When you get the bloody mess perk and the bad guy explodes into little red chunks, it's ludicrous, it's silly, it's over the top, and it's awesome. The cute ponifications of Fallout iconography, like the perks, follow a trend from the show and is a fandom in-joke. Whenever applicable, use a horse-related pun. The cutesier and dumber, the better. It is meant to be comedic that all of this intense stuff is happening in this cutesy-wootsy world. Like, the characters aren't aware of the joke because that's just the world that they live in. That is reality for them. But it's supposed to be a little bit absurd. But it actually does fit Fallout really well, because instead of leaning into the 50s retrofuturism aesthetic, Fallout Equestria can lean into My Little Pony's cute pony magic aesthetic. But anyone can get Fallout because everyone knows what the 50s and their idea of the future looked like. And everyone can recognize iconic landmarks and will feel a little bit unnerved when made to imagine a world where they're in ruin. But if you don't have an in-depth understanding of My Little Pony's character and setting, you won't fully appreciate the gravity of something like Derpy being a ghoul and being mutilated by raiders. For anyone who doesn't know, Derpy, or Ditsy Doo, was a background character who, in the first episode, had a lazy eye because of an animation error. But the fans noticed and loved her so much that she was adopted by the creators and became a canon character. She's beloved by the community, and for that to be her fate is honestly tragic. But the fact that she went from being a derpy klutz to the person who wrote the Wasteland Survival Guide means that she evolved into a resourceful badass, a hardened survivor, without losing her kindness and desire to be of service, even after ghoulification and losing the ability to speak. That's all really inspiring and hopeful. But without that background knowledge of My Little Pony, you'll miss out on that and so many of the other little details that make Fallout Equestria good. When it comes to little Pip, it's quite clear that she's a Fallout protagonist. She levels up, she gains perks, and she's inexplicably the only one who can pick locks. And that's a reference to the games and a joke about the internal logic of them, or lack thereof. But she's also a My Little Pony protagonist, so she's idealistic, sometimes dumb, and follows the cartoonish logic, or lack thereof, of one. And that's a key thing to remember about Fallout Equestria. It follows the logic of both the games and the show, for better or worse. In both, there are things that you just have to accept are things because otherwise the world would fall apart. You must willingly suspend your disbelief that in Fallout, you will always be the first one to check that box for scavengeable goods. And in My Little Pony, you have to suspend your disbelief that ponies can do 90% of the things they do with hooves. The guys at Mares and Stuff believe that Pip was too much of a hero in a world that wouldn't allow it, while Ramblelime says she mostly failed at being morally gray. This is where I see the games and show intersecting. I see Pip as being a My Little Pony protagonist who has a defining idealistic virtue she tries, fails, and learns how to better live up to. She's definitely the hero who does all she can to do what's right, just like the main six, and even the Fallout heroes, depending on how you play them. But the Fallout setting demands you make tough choices, and sometimes she makes the wrong one, and it has harsh consequences. In the show, a mistake means feeling bad, learning, apologizing, and then maybe a musical number. But in Fallout Equestria, someone dies, and, well, you just gotta bear it and try and do better next time. Ramblelime mentions Monterey Jack, and that whole scene with him at Ten Pony is a flipped script on how a friendship lesson in the show plays out. There's no talking it out, no easily digestible lesson on how to be a good friend, and no happy end there. It's a strange and darkly humorous conclusion in true Fallout fashion. A lot of Fallout Equestria characters have Fallout parallels, and I don't know if there's a specific one for him, but his execution and orphan kids bring to mind a little bit of dark humor from Fallout 3. If you take a quest from... Fucking hell, mosquitoes, goddamn. If you take a quest from Lucas Sims and he dies, probably because you kill him for one reason or another, when you finish his quest, his kid rewards you. That's how Fallout logic works. And it applies here. Where Pip's guilt is concerned, I guess I get it. I understand why he finds it annoying, but I just don't. Maybe Cray's Rambling's voice made her come across as cool and collected instead of the plucky yet naive squeaker she more accurately is. But she's a cute, idealistic pony in a crapsack world. Again, the juxtaposition between cute pony and bleak Fallout forms the core of how this story works. Just like Pip's swearing, yes, it is XD random, but it's the irony in a My Little Pony being so foul-mouthed. It's kind of funny, and it's akin to Mayor McCready's gimmick. You don't expect it, but hey, that's who she is. That ironic contrast is a pervasive element throughout nearly every aspect of the story, including how her character contrasts with the setting. And that contrast is the root of much of her internal struggles. Pretty much all of the characters, in some capacity, struggle to be something that the Wasteland stops them from being, because the Wasteland is an anathema of what Equestria should be. Where Ramblelime says that the story seems to be about how friendship isn't all it's cracked up to be anymore, I think he's missing the full, deeper picture. The overarching theme I believe Fallout Equestria plays with is corruption and, by extension, self-destruction. We see how the world and how characters become corrupted by self-destruction, and how that self-destruction feeds corruption. My Little Pony's moral is that by being good people and good friends, we can do our part to make a better world. But in this apocalypse, the polluted landscape is reflected in the corrupted people, and indeed, the apocalypse happened because the ponies strayed from their harmonious, friendly way of life. The prologue lays down this very simple but foundational concept perfectly, and that's why I think that if you're the type of person who ignores and skips prologues, you should be killed. Pip's defining trait is her determination to fight that corruption and not let it bring her down. Just like fighting an addiction, which is one of the most well-known and pernicious forms of self-destruction that there is. Her role as a hero is as a lightbringer. That's what she's called. She's not really the one who saves the world, but she serves as an example to others of how that can be done. She shows people that it is possible to fight against the Wasteland and to bring back friendship and harmony. That's why I think the ending with the Enclave is a powerful one, because while she doesn't solve everything, she is the catalyst that leads to things getting better. She breaks the cycle of self-destruction and instead, by staying true to her ideals against it all, makes positive change. That rings true to the journey of the Fallout protagonists, where the hero doesn't save the world, they just save their little corner of it, and it all adds up in the end. And it rings true to My Little Pony, where the heroes save the day by bringing people together and helping them be friends and do good on their own. Whether or not you like her is, as always, a matter of taste. If her personality doesn't jive with you, unfortunately, you won't like the book, simple as. She acts like a naive dumbass a lot of the time, she's often immature, and she can be annoying. She's like a My Little Pony character. One thing about My Little Pony characters is that they are cartoonish and wacky, and the cartoonish and wacky is easily grating. Again, it comes down to personal tastes, and what stylistic choices and character archetypes resonate with you. And yes, it must be said at the end of the day that sometimes writing just is not that stellar, but I never expected something super complex. Even though the story meandered a bit after they found Velvet, I still enjoyed it. It very much felt like I was seeing a Fallout character and their companions doing a questline, and like I was watching an episode of My Little Pony. Both tell fairly simple stories in short, easily digestible packages, and let's be real, sometimes their writing can be hit or miss too. But their main draws are their characters and settings, and if you like them enough, the sometimes imperfect writing is blindingly outshined by how much fun you have. But again, if you don't like the characters and her setting, it doesn't matter how good the story is. You just won't enjoy it, because it's not your thing. But with Fallout Equestria, I do like the characters and I do like the world, so even if they aren't working towards some critical plot point with lots of drama and high stakes attached, I still enjoy tagging along because being with them is fun, even if it's aimless. That's why slice of life anime is such a big thing, because that kind of story just, it resonates with people. And while watching anime schoolgirls go about their day doesn't compel me, watching pony wasteland wanderers go about their travels does. Now, my personal favorite Fallout Equestria book is Project Horizons. It evolves K-Cat's work and improves on it in almost every way. I find the writing style itself to be far more engaging and polished, Blackjack and her friends to be much more compelling characters, her quest and the many subplots to all be interesting and emotionally satisfying, and what Somber does with the foundation laid by K-Cat to be absolutely masterful. Now, it is flawed, particularly a little bit at the end involving a character by the name of Bastard. Aptly named, I guess. But despite all that, I absolutely love it. It is complex, intellectually stimulating, and overall far better, technically speaking, and in my opinion, subjectively. Duh. Yet I still believe Fallout Equestria, the original, is a brilliant bit of writing in its own right for its own reasons. I think holding it up next to something like Project Horizons or similar work does it a huge disservice. Again, this story is, first and foremost, meant to be a fun adventure written by an amateur writer, an escape into an interesting, exciting world with fun characters, and it absolutely is that. Comparing it to something similar written by a professional writer with all a professional's training and resources would be like comparing a fantasy adventure series like Ranger's Apprentice to The Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is undoubtedly superior in almost every technical respect, but Ranger's Apprentice never tried to do what Lord of the Rings did. Its goal was simply just to be fun and entertaining, and it is just that. The fantasy race of blonde, burly, wolf ship sailing, berserking sea raiders with horned helmets and battle axes called Scandians aren't anywhere near the same level as the Numenorians, but if I wanted to just sit back and read a story that would take me somewhere fun and make me feel, I know which I'd choose. I'd choose either one because both are good. They're just good in different ways. No, the Scandians don't have the same depth and complexity as the Numenorians, but the Scandians do just fine because simply they're fun, and that's all they need to be. And Fallout Equestria is the same. It's an unpretentious, uncomplicated romp with an interesting premise, and that's all it tried to be, and it delivers on that. So, Ramblelime's conclusion is that if you like My Little Pony and you like Fallout, you'll probably enjoy the book, but if you don't like My Little Pony and you're just a Fallout fan, you probably won't. And I agree with that almost entirely. I'd say it more depends on your tolerance for cartoonishness. But there's also the simple fact that this was written for people who have a in-depth understanding of My Little Pony. So a lot of the things that make it good are going to be flying right over your head, and it just isn't going to resonate with you as much as it does for people who do have that background understanding. But ultimately, if you're at all interested, I suggest the next time you're just chilling or hanging out, playing a game, you put the audiobook on and just see what you think. Or maybe you can try a different Fallout Equestria fic, like maybe listen to my narration of Project Horizons, huh? But my main takeaway from comparing my reactions to his is that target audience matters. The Closer Look made a great video about why critic and audience ratings are so often wildly different, and I recommend you go and check that out. It's pretty interesting. But the gist is, though, that critics do critique for a living, and so they are obligated to watch things that are not meant for them. And because it's not meant for them, it doesn't resonate with them, and then that, unfortunately, reflects in the review, and it just is bleh. And because it's not meant for them, it just doesn't resonate with them like it does for the person who it is meant for. And so therefore, it's important to take into account if you're the target demographic before you denounce something as being total crap. It's something I think everyone does and probably does all the time. I know I have. So going forward, try and see what other people appreciate in a story. And open your mind to other perspectives, be it what other people appreciate about something you think sucks, or what other people might think sucks about something you appreciate. And that way, maybe there will be a little bit more friendship and harmony in the world. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. So, like if you enjoyed, like the linked videos if you enjoyed, subscribe if you like my other stuff as well, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.